The ukulele music you just heard was from students at Dewitt Elementary in Cuyahoga Falls. And those instruments were purchased through an Educator Initiative grant from the GAR Foundation. Hello, my name is Lucille Esposito, and I am the Consulting Manager from the GAR Foundation Educator Initiative Grants Program. And I'm pleased to join you that you've joined us today for our webinar on the creative edge. With me today is Dr. Rick Verdig, Summit Professor of Learning Technologies at Kent State. Welcome, Rick.
Thanks, Lucille. What a blessing to join you today as we participate in the third of our webinars in the Teaching Teachers with Technology series, or what we've called T3 for short. Today we have a real treat. At the end of both of our first webinars on Survive to Thrive and our second one on Pedagogy of Care, both of which actually can be viewed online, we asked our participants what they wanted to learn next, and people shared that they wanted to see more EIG project examples of the great work being done in our schools. So what we're going to do today is introduce 4 projects. We'll hear directly from the voices of the project leaders, and we'll follow that up with a Q&A session. So to our attendees, if you have questions, please feel free to go ahead and post them in the chat at any time as you're listening to presenters. After the Q&A, we'll move into a discussion about how you all can get more involved. And finally, we'll end with a survey where you'll not only get credit through signing up for contact hours, but you'll also have a chance to take part in some next steps. So let's begin with our first project, which is a topic close to my heart, which is a project on gardening.
Hi, everybody. I'm here at Cuyahoga Falls High School with the 2 Steves, as we affectionately call them, 2 award winners from the GAR Eig Grant to talk a little bit about their urban agriculture program here. So if you guys would each introduce yourselves and then tell us a little bit about the impact that this program has on students here at Cuyahoga Falls.
All right, well, I'm Steve McIntosh, Intervention Specialist here at Cuyahoga Falls High School.
Steve Newlon, Social Studies at Cuyahoga Falls High School.
And the impact that it has on students, I mean, there's a ton of different ways that it's impacted our students, I think. First and foremost, I think it's taught them empathy, taught them the importance of helping others. Because everything that we grow here, we donate to local food pantries in the area, namely Good Neighbors right here in Cuyahoga Falls. And it's just a great way for them to be a part of their community and work to solve a problem.
That's awesome. And what do the kids do on a day-to-day basis in this class?
It changes. And as the class evolves, we're going to kind of figure that out as we go. This is our first year having a classroom setting for urban agriculture. Mainly in the fall, we're out here harvesting. After we get done harvesting, if we have an empty bed, we start planning. If it's days we're inside, we're designing signage, organizing a garden party. We have kids that are working with their hands that are going to build us a rather large compost bin. After they get done with that, they're going to work on a wash table or a market stand or irrigation. So it changes from day to day, which I think the kids like. And it's not your typical academic class. It's not sit and get. We're going to be out here working. We're going to be working in the greenhouse all winter long. It's a lot of movement with a little bit of let's sit down and get to work on some of these projects. So it's a totally different style of class. And I think for a lot of the kids, they like that it involves a lot of trust. We send them out here at times by themselves. 51% of the kids that go to Falls are below the poverty line. So they're going to need some help with food. And sometimes that help is not the greatest help. It helps, but we want to diversify their diets and introduce them to healthy food, because that's the other tricky issue.
Yeah.
Kids don't really want to eat good food because they've never had to before. And we want to make it more of like, tomorrow we're going to cut up the watermelons in the garden and we're going to just eat out here.
That's
enjoy
awesome.
the fruits of our labor.
And there's always learning going on. While they're picking vegetables, we're talking to them about why the vegetable looks like this, or why it's growing well, or why it's growing poorly, or what we can do to make it better. And the learning never stops. We're always moving and we're always teaching them.
That's incredible. The impact you guys are having on students, and even as I think of like the takeaways that they're going to have as they go off from this high school into their college or careers, it's just incredible. Can you guys talk to me a little bit about the origin of this? What gaps did you see, or what problems were you trying to solve when you started sort of brainstorming an urban agriculture program here at Cuyahoga Falls?
We were fortunate to have a greenhouse on the school site that was put in, geez, I don't know, now like 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, a while ago. And we got an alumni foundation grant from Cuyahoga Falls. It's $500, and my class used it to build a few raised beds so I could use it as an extension of the classroom for my functional academic students.
Awesome.
So they would meet their extended science standards, and we would do cooking demonstrations and all that with these small beds. And then when we got introduced to the GAR Foundation's grant, the Educator Initiative Grant, Newlon was like, hey, we can make this way bigger and make this a much bigger thing and bring general education students and special education students, students of all walks of life, together for this one common project. And the goal was always, it always has been and always will be, to like help others and be of service to others. So we were fortunate enough to be awarded our first EIG grant in, I believe, 2017. And that's what provided all of this. And then the subsequent Intro to Urban Agriculture class. We've already donated over 6,000 pounds of food in the last 3 years to families in need here in the Falls, and it just keeps going. The most recent EIG grant that we got was for the Cuyahoga Falls Learning Garden Network.
Right.
So just like every school has a gymnasium, every school has a cafeteria, we believe that every school should have a learning garden. It doesn't have to be this big of a garden, or hopefully it would be bigger than our garden, you know what I mean? But whatever is feasible for them. But we just want to pass on kind of what we're doing here and impart it to the other schools in the district. And obviously we can't say that without mentioning our partnership with Dewitt Elementary. Heidi and Sarah and all their students over the years, we've gotten to work on a number of different projects together, and we bounce ideas off each other, and they're kind of the farm system for our Intro to Urban Agriculture class, you know, because the students that are there, they're a few years from now, they're going to be here, you know, and we've had some come up and like, oh, I remember when you visited the first time, and so it's pretty cool.
Today I am at Dewitt Elementary School in Cuyahoga Falls, and I have Heidi Short and Sarah Suboticki with me here today. And they are going to have a great conversation with us regarding their Education Initiative grant that was written around gardens. Can you talk to me, Heidi, about the name of your grant and what exactly is behind your grant?
Well, nice to have you with us today, Angela. Sarah and I wrote this grant. It's called the Tiger Zen Den. And we wrote this grant to bring calmness and to bring peace to our lives in a very chaotic time.
We just realized that there was a need after the pandemic, with a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, too much screen time for these students. So we thought that having an outdoor Zen space would be an awesome idea, coming right off of virtual learning and in midst of the pandemic.
Excellent. And so you talked a little bit about the why. Can you go deeper into, talk about your compelling story, some of the things that you were really concerned about as it relates to why it was important to create this garden?
Well, we didn't realize how much we took advantage of the fact that students were in face with us, front of us, and it just really made us realize the importance of connections, of being together, and being able to be outside would be an easy fix, weather permitting, for the students to create another classroom, but it would be an outside classroom.
And we saw the success that we had from our other grant, which is our outdoor courtyard. The students coming out, actually getting hands-on, digging dirt, putting out mulch, planting flowers, watching the nature, the animals and everything, and they're thriving. And we just thought, let's do this in the front of the school for a little bit different purpose.
Okay. I love this space. It is so beautiful, and I love the fact that it's a space for calming, and you can actually feel that as you sit here. Can you talk to me about some other ideas that may have come about because of the start of this garden, or other connections that you've made with the school?
We've been very blessed to have previous grants, and we very much find the importance of the arts, music and art, and even gym, physical education. So our music teacher has been able to incorporate ukuleles into the curriculum, even as science-based, with music and sound, and they are able to come outside and play their ukuleles in this space, as well as the art.
Our art teacher, she loves to bring the kids outside, do a lot of nature work, and just being out here and just, being in this calm space to create their artwork. And they're also going to be working on making some mosaics that are going to go hung back here on the wall behind us from each grade level. And then our gym teacher, he is going to be coming out here, and we're going to be doing some yoga throughout the year. So we're really excited about that, just getting the kids out throughout every class in our school.
Mr. McIntosh and Mr. Newlon were able to donate these compost bins to our school because they outgrew the size of their compost bins, so they were able to give us these. And so our students are able to make connections in science class with decomposers here and compost their scraps from lunchtime, whether it be carrots or apples, and they bring them here and watch how the decomposers break those down.
So now we're trying to get our all the other elementary and middle schools on board, and we have commitments from pretty much every school. And now our students in Intro to Urban Ag over the winter will be facilitating those partnerships and developing a plan for all of them to implement in the spring.
Well, guys, thank you so much for your time,
Thank you.
and thank you for the incredible impact you're having through the urban agriculture program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really excited about this. I hope you guys are inspired and you consider applying for our EIG grant. I'm going to send it back to Rick and Lucille.
Lucille, as I listened to, both gardening projects, I couldn't help but think about the book, The Last Child in the Woods, a book that basically highlights the importance of nature for child development. What is great about that book and also these projects is that these ideas are backed by research. For instance, we know spending time outdoors is not only good for personal and public health, but an increased overall sense of well-being, improved physical activity, social connectedness, and even a greater connection to nature. But as you've shared with me before, this connection to nature, particularly through EIG, doesn't just have to be with traditional gardens, right?
Yeah, pretty cool to see what's going on at Dewitt and Cuyahoga Falls High School. It makes me want to get outside and pull a few weeds in my garden. Seriously though, as we think outside of those raised boxes, we have funded some amazing projects that get at other aspects of connecting to nature. For instance, EIG teachers have worked with students to bring back the monarch butterfly, or to find what plants will encourage honeybees to pollinate, or to explore their own 5 senses by creating a sensory garden. The list goes on. These are just a few of the other ideas that help Summit County students get outside and not be that last child in the woods. Think about that as we now go to St. Joseph's Parish School, where teachers and students are learning coding through the lens of developing their own sense of self, and how we can all make this world a better place and know that we are better together.
Am on the EIG committee, and I am excited because today I am here at St. Joseph Parish School in Cuyahoga Falls, and I have Megan Fearon with me and Corrine Mack, who are going to share some exciting, wonderful, innovative things that they've been doing here as it relates to the EIG grant that was written last school year. And so I'm going to start off with asking Miss Mack, tell us about who you are, the name of your project, and just give us a brief overview of what you were able to accomplish with this grant.
So my name is Corrine Mack, and we were looking at, for our project, Coding with a Conscience. So how kids can make decisions based on their world around them, their community, and how it impacts them as a person and the outside world as well.
I love that, Coding with a Conscience. Talk to me more about that title, Coding with a Conscience, and Why those words?
We wanted to connect it to our everyday lives here and the role models that we have in our students' lives, and we wanted to make sure that we connected coding across the board and gave them examples of people that could be role models for us and ways to implement that into the curriculum so that they could code with a purpose.
So this leads us to, I want to hear more about the purpose and what drove you to write this grant. What was your compelling story behind the why of this grant?
So I love and am passionate about math and computer science, which go hand in hand, and also building good communicators of our students. So we really wanted to write a grant where we could help our students through coaching and modeling how not only to solve problems, but also to communicate in a way that they're respectful with others, and also having the faith and their conscience and moral decision making be a part of the impact of the decisions that they make.
Wonderful. So as you worked through the grant last school year, this was the first time that you wrote this grant. So last year was the first year that would have gone into implementation. Tell me about some of the things that you felt like you accomplished, that you achieved, and what impact did it have on the students, and what things did maybe that you had to tweak because of some of the unexpected things that were happening just within the world last year?
Well, COVID was a big hurdle for us, but we persevered and we wanted the students to be able to participate in any activity that we could safely. So we had to take a step back and make a plan as to how we could alter what we wanted to accomplish with the students and do it in a safe way. And we persevered, and we had very small group instruction. We were able to wipe off the robots, and I think as a school, moving on with some normalcy with coding and being able to participate with their classmates was very helpful.
Wonderful. And so as we move on to this school year and looking at some of the things that you accomplished last year, what kind of things came about as it relates to your next steps? What else do you want to do to build on what you've done?
So our next steps are developing more community in teams. And again, we still have COVID this year, so we do have some limitations. And then having the students write about it. Really tying in that literature piece of sharing with them stories of saints, great role models, and featuring men and women in science with the focus specifically on women, just because we know that that is an area that we want to improve and have more girls realize their abilities in that area. So the writing, working more on the collaboration and how one individual can work together as a team, because where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them, is the scripture we tie it into. So how we're better together as a community, sharing ideas and working together.
And just to piggyback on that, I think it's one of our goals as we were moving forward was to empower particularly girls in middle school and really across the board to gain some understanding that they are capable of doing this, because many times I think that middle school students or students in general have a mindset of, I can't do this. And we want the girls to walk away with, I am as capable as anybody else in this room. And everybody can participate in the project.
Look at you program that, Leah. Good job. What do you think, Leah? It's fun.
This is wonderful. I love, this is a perfect example of a grant that was written that incorporates so many different components. You got literacy, you have science, you have math, you have your, even your, what is it, like philosophy as it relates to the religion piece also, that's all tied in and integrated within what you're doing with this project. So this is just wonderful, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with and build on for our next grant season, which I do hope that you are submitting.
Oh, yeah. Our mind is already racing on that one. It's very energizing to participate in this, and as much as I was like, okay, it might be nice just to take a breather, it's your mind is constantly thinking, what can I do next? And as a teacher, it's very energizing to see the students involved in it, but as well as our colleagues are embracing this and the students are loving it.
For me, it's changed the trajectory of my career doing the EIG grants, because I'm 4 through 9 math and ELA, and I left math to go into tech because of the problem solving piece. I kind of got pulled into that, and now I'm back in math again with a computer science focus. So writing the grant and getting ready for gearing up for another grant season is super exciting for us.
So we heard your purpose, we heard some steps of where you want to go next. Tell us give us a little more detail about what is it that students were actually doing with the coding and the robots in the classroom.
So with the students, we started off with team building without tech, and then we moved into using the tech. They would code different sequences. Started with the younger kids with sequencing a story. We did the old lady who swallowed a fly. Most of you probably know that story, and went through coding the sequence. So they had to move a B-bot through the details of the story, and then we looked at the coding language of what that would look like.
So that was a primary activity. We also introduced coding with Edison's, and at the holiday time, we jumped into coding a story. They jumped into a story, and they had to create a sequence of the events, major events in the story.
This is our code for our project. There she is, our bright and shining star, all done by Sharon and a little bit by me.
Starts on a snowy winter day. Cindy Lou decides to go for a small walk, but ends up meeting someone new.
On her walk, she dropped off.
It's wonderful to be able to reach out to Lucille Esposito. Was an absolutely awesome support to us, as well as our partnership with Kent State University. They were a wonderful support to us as we were looking at what our grant said and how we were going to execute it, because COVID provided a few bumps in the road.
So we're very blessed to work with Kent State's Ed Tech department, and we have Dr. Annette Krakowski from Kent State University that we partnered with, and Mr. Tom McNeil, who've helped us throughout this project. They started first with teaching all of us. All the teachers went through a coding workshop, and they coached us to be able to support the students as we began our many coding adventures. And they were such a pivotal piece, because we really have been stretched out of our comfort zone, and it's nice that we are linking arms with them rather than us trying to figure it out on our own. We have that PD and support that we've been able to collaborate and connect with them throughout this whole year. So one of the blessings that came out of COVID, yes, I said blessings from COVID, was that we had a field trip in our grant to go to Kent State to their AT&T classroom, and that was something we couldn't do because of COVID. And Lucille was a resource that allowed us, enabled us to be able to pivot and take something where we would have gone to Kent State. We brought it in-house, and then we also were able to really expand on our community piece and have an opportunity through our partnership with Kent State to learn about Hands of Gratitude, where our students made prosthetic hands for not only children and adults in our country, but also Central America, which tied in perfect to our building community. One of the things we always wanted here at St. Joseph Parish School is to go beyond these walls, beyond these doors, have our students just really become good people, and to have that piece to be able to say, you make a difference, each one of you make a difference, was huge, and we were thankful for that pivot.
So the changes that we had to make along the way because of COVID or because of things that were not working as we planned, it turned out even better than I had expected.
All right, well, thank you, ladies. I appreciate you having taking the time to talk to me today. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and hand it back over to Lucille and Rick.
All right, so Lucille, I'm going to end up saying this about all of our projects, but I love this project. And it's not because I mentioned Kent State or that it's about robotics. The truth is that the core of this work is really this push towards what we call computational thinking. And we know that, computational thinking helps students with abstracting and generalizing and understanding algorithms and even problem solving. And moreover, this grant and the last grant have shown that these research-based outcomes can happen with an interdisciplinary lens. In other words, gardening doesn't just have to happen in a biology class, or computational thinking doesn't just have to happen in a computer science class, as Angela pointed out. Moreover, even though this was about coding, this was also about SEL. So what are some other technologies that you've seen used by teachers throughout EIG to introduce computational thinking?
Thanks, Rick. I just came across this quote this week. My passion can meet another person's need. As you saw and listened to these dedicated educators who had to make many adjustments to their ideas because of the pandemic, they were able to help students create prosthetic hands for underserved children because their passion is centered in their values of Christian education. But coding can look very different through each teacher's passion. For example, maybe you have an interest in drone technology for your students, or working with robots and creating characters from books that your classes are reading, whether it's Shakespeare or the short story Seed Folks, which is set in Cleveland. There's so many ways to engage your students with computational thinking. Now, in our final segment, we will move to Jennings Community Learning Center, where teachers and students are literally learning self-control techniques, both with AR and VR. Now we're going to enter Jennings Virtual Village.
Everybody, I'm here at Jennings CLC with some incredible guests. We have Dr. Jones and Dr. Farmakidis here to talk to us a little bit about the Virtual Village, which is a program here at Jennings designed to help students develop 21st century skills and get the benefits from social emotional learning and trauma support and ESL and all kinds of incredible things. So I'm really excited to get into it. So if each of you could introduce yourself briefly and then tell us a little bit about this program, what students do when they come into the Virtual Village, and then the impact that it has on kids.
My name is Dr. Jones. I'm the instructional coach here at Jennings CLC.
My name is Dr. Gus Farmakidis. I am the media specialist here at Jennings CLC for Akron Public Schools.
So Virtual Village was something that came about as a result of the first round of our GAR grant, Educator Initiator grant that we applied for back in 2016. It was our first year. Dr. Farmakidis and I had both arrived at Jennings, having never been at this school before, and what we found was we were just amazed with the unique population of students that we had. Jennings has a large population of students, many who come from refugee camps. They settle here in this area, and what we very quickly kind of discovered in our conversations together was that some of our students were coming with some trauma background. We also knew that just in the area that we were living in, that we do have a population of students in Akron Public Schools, whether they're coming from a refugee camp or not, that experience trauma and were in need of trauma supports. Also with the understanding that some of our teachers would benefit from the idea of some trauma-informed teaching strategies. And so I very quickly learned that Dr. Farmakidis had this extensive background in technology and knew all about virtual reality. And so that was how the whole thing got started. We kind of started putting our heads together to figure out how can we engage our students, bring them out of the cognitive lockout that we know many students who come to school with a trauma background have. And we really wanted to get them into their learning brain. We know the best way to do that, the research says, is to activate their senses. So what better way to activate their senses than to get them engaged in VR? Enter Dr. Farmakidis.
So the virtual reality was something that I had worked with a bit in the past, but this was a whole different story. And using Michele's expertise in like the trauma and the learning brain, the cognitive lockout that she's talking about, and using the GAR Foundation and the funding that would afford us to get some of these technologies in the VR, we had to piece that together, with our student population, which I think now we're at 41 different languages in this school. And so along with the virtual reality, Dr. Jones and I, we realized that those soft skills were so important for the students, especially the ESL students, the eye contact, the confidence. So using not just virtual reality, but using the video production studio with the green screen was huge, where and we would work with the ELA teachers, and they would write, if they're talking about their fears, they would write a paragraph or a paper about their fears, and then they would come in and have to present it in front of the green screen. We could put their fear behind them. If they were afraid of snakes, we could have the snake slither in behind them. But the green screen afforded us that opportunity to get them up there and get them talking and get them some confidence and some eye contact and have some fun with it.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, my name is Rosalyn Lewis, and I'm a translator with the Akron Public School System. I have just come from doing the Anne Franklin VR, and it just blew my mind away. I got a concept of what it was about when I read a little bit, but when I got into the VR, I was living there, and it was so real. I felt like I wanted to touch everything.
So the virtual reality, with the experience that I've had, remembering it, how it would immerse a student into a different spot, and in this case, we use things like a relaxed river or under the ocean, and to immerse the students in somewhere more tranquil, to ease that trauma, the immediate trauma.
One of the neatest things that we did early on was working with the teacher of the 7th grade curriculum. There's a story about a man who writes a memoir, and he's floating down the river, and it's called Mississippi Solo. Any Akron Public School teacher who teaches 7th grade will know exactly what I'm talking about. But our students needed that background knowledge. So aside from even just the trauma supports, they needed to know what it felt like to float down a river and then a storm coming and all that, and they didn't have a lot of that background. And so Dr. Farm was able to download these apps of the river and the storm and take them through this virtual experience, and then we go and we'll read the story. And then all of a sudden now when the teacher's talking about the description and the setting, they have this background knowledge, not only just in their mind's eye, but they have experienced it. We've had teachers that sometimes they'll call Dr. Farmakidis and be like, look, I have a student, he had a horrible morning, he can't concentrate, can he come regulate? Dr. Farm has it set up in Virtual Village where, these chairs are set aside for these students. They come in, he has people who he has trained to do them. So one student in particular who he could tell you about who, he hooks the kids up, they sit, they are able to regulate, that frees him up to continue supporting the teacher with their lesson. Now we've got kids over here that are, calming down and doing the trauma support. Over here, they're accessing the academic learning goal.
And I think with the tech specialist of the students that we are bringing in to help, at one point I'm like, here's the VR, and I pushed it over. I said, here, figure out how to use this. Wow. This is their world now. This is the 21st century learning that we're talking about. And it's funny, the young man figured out how to use it. And one of the things that we're working with, and that speaks to career too, the cradle to career, right? But some of the students that are refugee or from not strong speaking English, they don't have the confidence. We're talking about the soft skills too now. We're talking about the eye contact, speaking up, the leadership roles. Yeah. And this student was amazing. Now, I'm like, go ahead and tell them about the VR and the things that they can do today and why they're doing it. And he takes over. Someone that came in a couple weeks ago that was very soft-spoken is now taking a leadership role. So it's awesome for that in the career. Maybe he decides, and you asked him, didn't you say?
I did. I asked him just in watching the way that he was able to very calmly, because with the VR and he's giving directions, you have to give directions multiple times. And even that could be difficult, for an adult even sometimes, but mm-hmm. he maintained, and I know probably watching Dr. Farmakidis and his ability to continue to give the directions without getting frustrated And so the young man was able to do that. And I said, well, my goodness, you really, are really good at this. Have you ever thought of being a teacher? And he said, well, as a matter of fact, I'm starting to really think maybe I would. And I thought, my goodness, increase our pipeline of educators and increase our pipeline of educators who are coming from diverse backgrounds. And so it's all of that. There are just so many moving parts to the virtual village. These are things we did not sit down and say, we're going to have this, and this happen. We only knew that we were willing to put our brains together and do something, and we knew that we wanted it to have to do with technology and social emotional, and we knew that we wanted to support the students and the teachers, and the rest of it really came about as a result of the reflection piece. At the end of each year, Dr. Farm and I would just sit down and say, okay, what is it? What does it look like? Where is it now? And each year it has changed, and it has just gotten better and better. So we're just so grateful to even have had the opportunity to be able to do this with our students.
Absolutely. And like you said, the teachers would start scattering. They looked like you turn a light on and the mice would run or whatever, but they didn't want any part of me because they knew what I was going to ask them for. Your phone, please? Can I have your phone, please? Can I have your phone? And that's what the GAR Foundation did, was they afforded us the opportunity to find the funds to start the virtual village. We had the why now.
Yeah.
Dr. Jones and I had that why. We had the ESL, we had the social emotional, we had the right setting. We believed in it. We had the brains behind it. And Dr. Jones, I'm the technology guy, so I want this. And she was, right there to piece it all together. But then that's where we were at, and we're like, okay, GAR is the right foundation for this. This is what they're doing. This is precisely what they're about.
Dr. Jones, Dr. Farmakidis, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your inspiring story and all the work you're doing here at Jennings and the impact you're having on students and teachers in the greater community. Hopefully you're inspired to tackle big problems in your community and maybe even reach out to Dr. Jones and Dr. Farmakidis about how you can start brainstorming ways to bring in virtual reality or some social emotional learning into your schools. At this time, I'll kick it back to Lucille and Rick.
So I've known Gus for a while. I've never known him as Dr. Farm, but that's my new nickname for him. I like that. As I said with the other projects, I love this work, and I love the love for students and the care for their mental health and learning that came out of this work. What's interesting for me is that we understood the value of social emotional learning, or SEL, before the pandemic. But I feel like the pandemic really brought teacher and student mental health into focus, and maybe one of the blessings, to quote our second presentation. So research showed us that teacher presence and teacher interventions were some of the main and dare I say some of the only stabilizing factors for student mental health over the last year or last 2 years. We knew SEL was important, but COVID put a spotlight on it. So Lucille, talk about other projects, if you will, or other tools related to SEL that you've seen teachers and students work on.
Well, first, don't you all want to go sit in those great, relaxing beanbag chairs? I know I do. They were all purchased by the Eig Grant. To answer your question, Dr. Rick, yes. As you begin to think of ways to meet the SEL culture of your own school, maybe your needs include a calming corner or a calming room or art and music experiences that help your students get into their learning brain. This could include QR codes, calming quotes that have been added to a community park, or even yoga in the gym, in the park, or as you heard, in the Zen Den. Then students can bring these calming techniques home as they teach their siblings, parents, guardians, how they might learn tenets of self-control. By the way, all these ideas I just talked about are not hypothetical. They are actual examples from our grants. They were created by Summit County teachers just like you. And guess what? I would be glad to be that connector. I would love to connect you with these teachers who would love to share their ideas and what's going on in their classrooms. Angela and Eric, I'd like to turn this over to you now for a time of Q&A, as our team of experts from the videos and you and Angela can answer and ask some questions. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Ferdig and Lucille. I hope you're as inspired as I am. Angela, are you excited?
Very excited.
Awesome. Friends, we are going to be joined by the real stars of the show, all of the teachers that did the hard work of writing these grants and then implementing them and changing their schools. There is no way that we're going to get to every single one of these teachers and get to hear all the brilliant things that they have in the time we have left. However, all of these representatives here, all these teachers, they want to help you. So we will share that contact information with you. Please reach out to these teachers and ask your questions. We're also going to stick around after this time to answer any questions that you have. So we're going to dive right in. I have our first question is for Cuyahoga Falls. So to the two Steves, either one of you can pick this one up. What was the biggest challenge in writing your first grant, as many teachers are thinking about writing theirs? And then what helped with the process as you did it?
Well, I would say that the hardest part about writing the grant was to just be a little bit more concise. I can be a little bit wordy when I'm writing because there's so many ideas and you want to get it all in there, and you want to tell your story and you want to explain every little detail of the grant, but it needs to be clear and concise. So what the biggest help to kind of hone that in for us was meeting with Lucille. She took time out of her schedule to come meet with us. I think it was maybe for half hour to an hour, something like that. And it really just put the whole grant process into perspective. We've written grants in the past before, but none that was as detailed as GAR grants. So that was crucial for us to figure out the direction that we wanted to take the grant, and we ended up getting it. So it definitely worked. So we're very appreciative. So take her up on it. Make sure you ask for help. That's what she's there for.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. Angela will tackle our next question.
Absolutely. This question is for Heidi and Sarah. People are asking, what other opportunities have the projects you've presented? What other projects have you thought about since the current projects you've presented? And then have you been able to build any more collaborations connected to the project beyond Cuyahoga Falls High School?
All those are great questions. I really want to meet with St. Joe's after watching that, especially since they're close down the street to us. I would love to work with anybody and everybody. I know Sarah probably feels the same way. We do have a discovery zone, so we do have an indoor space that you weren't able to see. So that was sort of first, and then we went outside. And again, anybody is welcome to come see all those. Missy Zender, Dr. Missy Zender from the ESC has been a great stepping stone to give us ideas. We're part of a STEM cadre with her, and I know that there's other school districts that do that too. So those opportunities have allowed us to think big, as Lucille always says. Sarah, you want to say anything to that? So
Sure. I was just going to say that we are very close to the Cuyahoga Falls Riverfront YMCA, and we are going to be working with them to offer some yoga outside, any classes they want to offer. We're happy to help them, and just working with people that are close. We do want to eventually have sort of an outdoor stage outside in our Zen Den, where we have some tree stumps as seating and just a little stage where the kids can do readers theater or music performances or singing performances, just to be outside, and art classes, whatever we want to have out there. And yes, St. Joe's, we want to partner with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's always so great to see like the greater impact and the connections that are built out of this. You really are joining a community when you submit for a GAR grant, and that is so invaluable. I know it has been for me.
Absolutely. Eric, before you start, I was just going to commend DeWitt on just the integration of the different subject areas, as well as bringing in that social emotional learning, because a lot of times people think that SEL is a different component, but we need to make sure that we're integrating SEL throughout every piece of our curriculum and the content that we're teaching in the way that we're teaching it, and bringing in that outdoors definitely touches that.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that. We're going to kick it over to Jennings CLC, Dr. Farmakidis and Dr. Jones. A question for you guys. What happened when your project, the project as presented in the grant didn't go exactly as planned? And what did you do? Because I think a lot of teachers are like, hey, I can't predict the future. So I'm sure rolling this out wasn't as smooth as it looks.
Hello, everybody. Well, that is a very good question, and that always happens on some level. I think the best way to answer that is we just sort of sit down and problem solve a little bit and try to stay as positive as possible, and make sure that we are, Dr. Gus always says, just make sure that we're looking at it through the lens of the spirit of the grant. And we always kind of just go back, and that's something that Lucille taught us something early on. So if there are little changes that need to be made, they can be made as long as we use that as our lens. That there really isn't, some things are just outside of your control.
And I think it's okay. And I think that sometimes the problem shifts, or the need shifts, and it presents itself for the need to move to some other plan, and that's okay. And then that's why we loved meeting with Lucille beforehand, because she really prepares you for what, things will change. They're going to, so just get ready for it. But you know what, it works out for the best.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. These things change, and they always do change, and hold your projects loosely. What we're looking for is that passion piece and how you're going to impact your students, so that the spirit of the grant is right on. I'll kick it back over to Angela.
So this question is for Megan and Corrine. What made you so comfortable? This is an oxymoron, but what made you so comfortable to go outside of your comfort zone? I mean, because you're talking about robotics and it sounds so intimidating, but you stuck with it. What led to that?
Oh, I'm going to jump right in and say peer pressure from Corrine. As a co-worker, and we were at that point team teaching our extreme class, she was quite enthusiastic about it, and it held my hand along the way. So it was either jump in and figure it out, or be not left behind, but join in on something that was going to be a great moment for our school. And Sarah and Heidi, yes, let's get together. We need to work together. We're so close together.
The other piece is because the GAR EIG requires that PD part, that to me is like those commercials, priceless. When they talk about credit cards, that's the priceless piece, because you're really not alone. So when you're pushing through your comfort zone, you've got those community relationships. Like we had Kent State University, and we also had Ann Reed from St. Sebastian's that helped us to be able to push through some of those moments where we felt like we couldn't. We had that partnership to lean on.
Awesome. And then I guess this is for everyone. At some point, did you ever reach out to Lucille, and what was your comfort level with doing that?
We always reach out to Lucille. She really is the best. When Heidi and I first started writing grants, Heidi, what was it, 5 years ago? Mm-hmm. Was it 5 years ago? We just, when Lucille came to talk to us at our building about the grants, Heidi and I, both our eyes got big. We looked at each other and we're like, yes, we're going to do that. But we had no idea where to start. So Lucille came in and really helped us kind of hone in on exactly what we were looking to do, kind of got us organized. We started doing some research on things. And I mean, definitely, if you're interested in doing grants, definitely reach out to Lucille. She's an amazing resource, very encouraging, and she always knows the right direction. So whatever she says, we do, and she's really awesome. So definitely reach out to her if you're start writing a grants.
I'd also add, please use the form that GAR has on their website. It's really easy. Especially don't do like a Google form and try to cut it down. Just use their form. That makes it so much easier. Trust me.
I was just going to say, Lucille, I think came into my life like 4 or 5 years ago, And she helps us be able to dream big and then how to make it more concise on paper and kind of to rein it in. At least for me, she's like, oh, that's a year 3 thing, maybe, Corrine, or year 2. Let's just focus on year 1 here. So I like that she allows you to dream, and she really helps. She doesn't give you the ideas. She just questions you to think about your ideas and really kind of become really clear about what you want for your kids, what needs need to be met, and how do you as an educator need to grow so you can meet the needs of your students.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. I love that you said that Lucille came into your life, because that just talks about how EIG grants not only impact the lives of our educators, but it's impacting your life. And then as a result of that, you're impacting the lives of children. Eric?
Yeah, thank you so much, Angela. Thank you to all of our teachers that took that bold step forward to apply for a grant. As you heard from everybody, Lucille is the greatest resource in the world, but everybody here is willing to help you, and all of our previous grant writers are willing to help you. It truly is a community of inspiring educators, and you can't be a part of this community without wanting to get better and wanting to have an impact on your school and community. So with that, we're going to kick it back to Dr. Ferdig to close out our session together. Dr. Ferdig.
Thanks so much, Eric and Angela and all the panelists. I went to school in the 1920s, back before any of you were teachers, but it makes me really jealous that I wish all of you were my teachers, because that's amazing things happening. So I know that some of you may not have had a chance to get your questions answered, and that's okay. Please continue to type your questions in the chat. Again, as Eric's shared, we'll stay around afterwards and answer any questions you have. But I actually want to kind of turn this around. And Lucille, I'm sure there's people who are listening who were really inspired and really liked what they saw, and now they're wondering how to get involved. So could you talk through some next steps for people that want to get involved in the GAR process?
Absolutely. I could talk for 4 or 5 hours, but I won't. We have all just experienced 4 different stories, 4 different sets of passions and ideas for teaching and learning in Summit County. We have seen teachers talk about their why they did this, why you got into this. Now, I want to tell you about the how. We at GAR are your how. GAR sets aside $350,000 for the EIG process every year. If you're an individual teacher and have passion to change some things or do some things in your classroom, you can apply for up to $5,000. Or if you have an entire school initiative, as you've seen here, or among different departments interacting, you can come to us for $10,000. These applications for this round of process are due February 25th, 2022 by 5 p.m. But you don't have to do this on your own. That's me. I am so lucky. I'm here for you to discuss your passions, your personal stories, or your why. We can meet in person or virtually. From now until the deadline, if you need me 10 times, because this is a first time, most people are first time writers. It's okay. I'd be glad to meet with you until this deadline. I can walk you through the application guidelines that Heidi mentioned and our rubric, which are available on our website. Plus, I bring them. I'm the bag lady. Well, we will discuss real life experiences that impact the entire school culture. I will also help you think outside that box. We do that simply by helping you focus on your needs through professional development, as Corrine had just said, and your students' needs through instructional tools, field trips, speakers, technology, etc. Those are the things that are funded by our EIG process. I'm available through email, and I think it's been up there, my phone, and I promise you, I will get back to you as soon as possible, usually within a day. Our mission at GAR Foundation is to make Summit County educators smarter, stronger, and more vibrant. You just saw this through these interviews. The truth, however, is that we could have filmed 100 more than that have changed the lives of students, teachers, and entire families in Summit County. We would love for you to join us on this journey by completing an EIG application. And maybe next year, we will feature you, your colleagues, and your students in a video. I leave you with these thoughts. What's your why? We at GAR are your how. As I can see in the stories and passions of the educators showcased today and those throughout the 8 years I've been doing this, you as teams become the wow. Hope to hear from you all, and I mean this sincerely, very soon. Now I turn this back to our wonderful Dr. Rick.
Thanks, Lucille. I didn't have the chance to have all of our great panelists as teachers, but I'm blessed to have them as colleagues and blessed to have you as a colleague and friend. So we are at the end of our allotted time, but before we close, we have a really important next step for you. In the chat menu, you will see a survey link. That survey is very important, so we're ending just a minute or two early, so you'll have time to complete it. Now, the survey lets us connect or contact you and award you with contact hours for today's webinar. But more importantly, it lets us connect with you on next steps. So go ahead and take a minute or two to fill that out. You're obviously free to go after you fill out your survey. However, we will stay online for anyone who wants to continue to ask questions to our panelists. On behalf of the GAR Foundation and its EIG program, thank you all for attending. Thank you to our great panelists for the work they're doing, and for all of you who devote so much to education. We look forward to seeing you next time.